Les gens, les boxeurs qui sont c'est très agressif. Donc ces t-shirts un peu à la Tyson, là, les shorts de cours, un petit
And when I say you must obey, just like the both of you took them out.
Et là, Maïva, c'est son milieu.
Ouais, mais le crochet. Magnifique shot.
Ah, c'est un vrai coup au corps.
Et ouais, le crochet au foie, il a touché.
Là, c'est un vrai coup au corps.
Pendant Bigois,
Ouais,
encore
pas
un rouge.
coup au corps.
Allez, c'est dur là, Lydia qui a arrêté.
Oui, forcément, elle remet un genou au sol.
Et elle regarde son point. Ça va dans tous les sens, là, par les deux boxeuses. Et tout ça par les bons points. Et la touche par les bons points. Elle a du mal, Viviane. Elle a du mal à récupérer.
Welcome to the motherfucking replay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Michael Benson. Eddie Hearn has stated that he believes Anthony Joshua's defeat to Alexander Usyk will lead to Dillian Whyte being made WBC mandatory for the Tyson Fury vs. Deontay Wilder 3 winner, as the WBC will no longer be waiting to see if an undisputed fight will happen. Lending further credence to that notion, Bob Arum has welcomed a potential Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte fight if Whyte's now ordered as WBC mandatory for the Fury versus Deontay Wilder 3 winner. That could be a big fight for Tyson, particularly if we held it in the UK, now that Top Rank has a UK broadcast partner in Sky Sports. That's palpable. The outcome of Joshua versus Usyk has reverberated throughout the entire weight class, and it's a stout observation from Eddie Hearn that since they don't have that to wait for anymore, that's not going to be an issue because Anthony Joshua is going to face Alexander for the second time early next year. Dillian Whyte's probability of the WBC ordering a fight. I mean, he's got to make it through Otto Wallin first. He has to get through that fight, but if he does, the WBC will have little to no excuses left to not order the fight.
Been dragging their feet with this.
For the longest time, we've talked about it endlessly here on the channel, and if Dillian makes it through that Otto Wallin fight, there's no reason they shouldn't order the winner of Wilder versus Fury 3 to face the winner of Whyte versus Wallin. You have to remember, Dillian Whyte isn't an according to Hoyle matchroom fighter. He's got a good relationship with them and a good thing going, but he's only with them on a fight-by-fight basis. There's nothing that stops him from fighting on a top-ranked card.
Top Rank presents that guy a fight.
And a number that is to his liking. There's no red tape stopping him from taking them up on that offer.
Hypothetically speaking.
Before this past weekend's fight, Tyson Fury released a hit list of names he'd like to face beyond the Deontay Wilder trilogy. Dillian Whyte was the next guy in line.
So Tyson says he's willing to do the fight.
Bob says he's willing to do it too. For Tyson, it's the next best thing. I mean, you won't have access to that big Anthony Joshua money fight. Anthony Joshua's all tied up with Usyk and those 3 belts.
None of that's available to you anyway.
But Dillian Whyte is, and Dillian Whyte would be your mandatory challenger if he makes it through that Otto Wallin fight. Makes sense.
It almost makes too much sense.
And I'm sure that Adam Smith and the people over there at Sky would like to have a blockbuster pay-per-view like this one on their platform since they're no longer in bed with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom. They don't have access to his stable.
Yeah, they had to go out and get a new one.
And it looks promising, but many of those fighters are in the early stages of their careers. None of them have the marquee value of a Dillian Whyte or a Tyson Fury, for that matter. So this is something I think they'd be very receptive to.
I mean, who's got the biggest name fighting on Sky Sports right now?
On Boxer or Wasserman? Chris Eubank Jr.?
Give me a break.
Sky Sports is doing what they've got to do to stay in the sport of boxing in the absence of Matchroom and the Matchroom stable. And for what it's worth, I think it's going to work out. But for the time being, they're not able to stage very many big fights with big-name fighters because big-name fighters aren't fighting on their platform at this time. This would afford them the opportunity to stage a big fight, big title fight, big pay-per-view in the near future. Because the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder trilogy, that's right around the corner. That's only, what, a week? Maybe a little over a week from now?
If Fury wins that thing.
And he beats Wilder for the second time, retains the WBC title. This is the ideal way to go for him.
As far as money fights go.
This is the second biggest fight in all of British boxing, if you can believe that. Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte.
Think about it.
Now, if by some chance Deontay Wilder wins that Fury trilogy, I don't know what happens after that.
He's never wanted to fight Dillian Whyte.
And with those things in mind, the WBC is going to have a hell of a hard time coming up with reasons to not order that fight.
I still don't think Wilder's receptive to it.
Ranks or no ranks, mandatory or no mandatory. I just get the sense that if Wilder were to win that third fight, he'd take that belt back to PBC's Isolation Island and perhaps defend it against the winner of Kovnowski versus Helenius 2.
Andy Ruiz.
Maybe he has a trilogy with Luis Ortiz.
Stop fucking around.
I'm not fucking around. I feel like if Wilder wins that fight, they'll try to find a way to weasel out of their obligation to face Dillian Whyte, their mandatory challenger, to face one of their stablemates. I mean, have you guys heard? Shelley Finkel, Wilder's manager, shuts down Undisputed Showdown for near-term future. Given that potential timeline, even if Wilder defeats Fury, Finkel has little desire to try and arrange for an undisputed title shot for his charge, at least in the foreseeable future. He said no because he has unfinished business, Joshua, and that will take him into next year, Finkel told Boxing Social in a response to whether or not Wilder, in the event he defeats Fury, would immediately try to face either Joshua or Usyk. The fight is not going to happen before that. We're only fighting a week after. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let Deontay win, as I believe he will, and then we will see what we're looking at in the first quarter to half of 2022. But at this moment, it won't be Joshua or Usyk because they're going to be dancing with each other.
And he's not wrong.
I don't often find myself agreeing with things Team Wilder says, Shelley Finkel in particular, but in this instance, he's telling the truth. Neither Anthony Joshua or Alexander Usyk are available to Deontay Wilder, so
The undisputed title fight ain't available.
even if Deontay Wilder wins, even if he gets the WBC title back, that undisputed title fight, not that I think he wants
I
it,
don't really think he's ever wanted it.
there's too much evidence to the contrary.
But either way, it's not available right now.
And it won't be available for some time. Shelley Finkel added, contrary to popular opinion, I do like Joshua. I think he is and was very good for the sport. He brought a lot of interest, as you can tell, with 60-something thousand people there. When he fought Klitschko, it was 100,000 or 90,000 or whatever the number was at Wembley. He conducted himself as a gentleman, as the champion.
Seems like a lot of people are being real nice to Anthony Joshua.
The people you would expect to kick him when he's down are offering him professional courtesies and pleasantries. The people who used to badmouth him before seem to have sympathy for him now. It's almost like they're pulling for him. And, I'm no wide-eyed optimist. I'm not naive. Maybe the reason that, Big John Fury and Shelley Finkel, maybe the reason all these guys are playing nice for a change is because they know Anthony Joshua has represented the greatest financial value to any fighter fighting in the heavyweight division. And I think they would like to see him get his belts back because the division ain't the same if he's not there to bring the fanfare to it.
Which one of these guys can have 90,000 people come out to see them fight?
20,000 at Madison Square Garden, about 90,000 at Wembley. More recently, what was it, 60, 70,000 at Tottenham?
Anthony Joshua's the cash cow of this division.
People's eyes roll in the back of their heads when you start talking about the business of boxing, but the business of boxing is just as relevant to the sport as the gum shields and the gloves, right?
You got it?
And if Anthony Joshua can't rebound off that loss, if he can't beat Alexander Usyk in the second fight, that might be a year mark for Usyk, it might, but Usyk himself, he ain't gonna bring the fanfare, more importantly, he ain't gonna bring the finance to the division that Anthony Joshua has.
He's not. He doesn't have the same following.
I think he's a great fighter. Excellent fucking fighter. Perhaps a once-in-a-lifetime fighter, don't get me wrong. As far as the boxing goes, Usyk is an exquisite boxer. But as far as marquee value, that's another conversation entirely. And if Anthony Joshua can't get those belts back, if he doesn't rebound off the loss, that's gonna suck a lot of money out of the heavyweight division, believe you me.
Well's gonna dry up.
Which may be the reason Shelley Finkel is all of a sudden playing nice when it comes to Anthony Joshua. John Fury, Tyson Fury as well. Maybe the reason they're pulling for this guy, or it seems like they're pulling for this guy, is because they know that.
The heavyweight division didn't heat back up till he rolled around.
Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder debuted as professional boxers years before Anthony Joshua came on the scene. And the division wasn't then what it is now.
Yeah, I think they'd prefer he get his belts back.
Just a hunch. And as far as Deontay Wilder, the then champion, now challenger, if by some chance he's able to reclaim the green belt, get that WBC title back, I don't think they're going to be too open to a Dillian Whyte fight. I mean, Shelley Finkel, he didn't mention him, even though they know he's the interim champion.
If you beat Fury, that's who you're supposed to fight.
It's supposed to be a mandatory challenger, and while the WBC might be delaying things a bit, dragging their feet, no official order has come down for the winner of Valeen versus Whyte to face the winner of Wilder versus Fury 3.
No, not yet.
Everybody knows The WBC is all out of excuses to not order that fight. Whether Wilder wins, or Fury wins, whatever happens, it's time for that order to come down. The Fury people seem a lot more receptive to that fight than the Wilder people. The Wilder people, at least to my knowledge, they haven't mentioned it. They haven't mentioned the potential Deontay Wilder versus Dillian Whyte showdown afterwards.
After the Fury fight, if they win.
And it needs to be addressed.
What are these guys playing dumb?
We've already had every version of this conversation that we can have. If Dillian Whyte is in fact this crash test dummy, highly hittable fighter that Deontay Wilder can knock out easily, then why not just fucking do it?
Yeah, if he climbs the mountaintop and beats Fury.
Why shouldn't that be the next fight? What are you afraid of?
Dillian's never been squirrely about the fight.
He's never been squirrely about Deontay Wilder's power, his right hand. It's never bothered Dillian Whyte. It's never left him feeling averse to having that fight. If you beat Fury, why shouldn't you take care of that guy?
Get it over with.
Now, just in reference to his upcoming fight with Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, the reigning WBC champion, had this to say. He says, Deontay Wilder is the most dangerous heavyweight out there, in my opinion. Wilder beats Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, the rest of the division comfortably, but he cannot beat me. And I feel like this is just Tyson Fury tooting his own horn and talking up his win over Deontay Wilder from February of last year.
And what could be his next win over him?
I don't think Wilder beats Usyk. The guy moves around too much. He won't allow Wilder to set his feet to get off that big right hand, that power shot.
No, Wilder's got a good right hand.
The straight right hand is often dubbed the southpaw killer, but you've got to get into position to throw it.
Wilder ain't got the feet to do that.
He never has. You've got to line that southpaw up for that right hand. It doesn't just happen on its own.
No, I don't think Wilder beats Usyk.
As far as Anthony Joshua, the jury's out. To a lot of people, Anthony don't seem like the same guy that knocked out his domestic rival Dillian Whyte years ago. He doesn't seem like the same guy that picked himself up off the canvas to knock out Vladimir Klitschko in their big fight. He doesn't seem to have the killer instincts that he had in the Povetkin fight. To a lot of people, Anthony Joshua's gone soft.
He's tentative.
Too tentative. To some people, he seems hesitant. Perhaps he's traumatized from what he experienced in the Andy Ruiz Jr. fight, the first one, and he doesn't let his power shots go with the same conviction, the same commitment, the same spite that he used to before he suffered his first professional loss. That's the look of things to a lot of people, and because he's in this weakened and vulnerable state,
At least to them he is.
maybe Deontay Wilder stands a better chance of knocking out this version of Anthony Joshua than the one we've seen in previous years.
Maybe.
I'm not going to be presumptuous. The book's not closed on Anthony Joshua.
Though that is how some people are feeling.
When I hear Tyson Fury say what he's saying about the bronze bomber, I can't help but think to myself that all he's doing is talking himself up indirectly. You're just saying that he's the most dangerous guy out there, so you look better for beating him, for having beaten him at least once.
You don't spend 7 years fighting those kinds of guys by accident.
The first 7 years of Deontay Wilder's career seemed like a blur, even to his own fans, because nobody knows who the hell those guys were that he was fighting. And you don't fight 7 years worth of those kinds of guys for 32 or 33 fucking fights by accident. That's by design.
What the hell makes Wilder the most dangerous guy out there?
When he's the one guy in this division that hasn't faced the vast majority of what's out there.
Neither him or his biggest win.
Luis Ortiz. Aside from each other, the last 10 years, who have these two guys fought?
Well, Wilder did fight Fury 2 times.
Though he hasn't beat him once, and let's see if he can change his luck in the third fight. Better still, we're not talking about the future, we're talking about the here and now and what we've seen so far. Deontay Wilder's been a professional boxer for something like 13 years, and all he's got to show for it is 2 wins over Luis Ortiz. But who's Luis Ortiz?
The guy that looked bang average against Malik Scotch.
And Dave Allen. I mean, in all seriousness, what is Luis Ortiz's claim to fame aside from being stopped by Deontay Wilder 2 times? What's Luis Ortiz's biggest win?
Because apparently Luis is Wilder's biggest win.
Wilder's own fucking fans talk more about that Luis Ortiz win than the wins over Bermane Stiverne. Bermane Stiverne was at least a champion once. It didn't last very long.
They'll talk up Ortiz before they talk up that guy.
And why? Luis Ortiz, like Deontay Wilder, he hasn't faced the vast majority of top 10 contenders out there.
Though he's been around for most of them.
The Ustinovs, the Pulevs, the Povetkins in their prime. And don't talk to me about Povetkin's pet scandal, because if you guys are okay with Luis Ortiz's pets, you should be okay with Povetkin's.
Yeah, they both got popped 2 times.
You're blowing smoke up everybody's ass calling Deontay Wilder the most dangerous guy out there. What makes him the most dangerous guy out there? 7 years worth of stat padding?
That's how he got most of those knockouts.
Wilder's own fans can't even tell you who he's fighting in his first 25 fights. And what really burns me up about all of this, I mean, what really gets to me is that right now, Anthony Joshua's taking a lot of heat for losing that Usyk fight. But Alexander Usyk, as an opponent, as a heavyweight, is better than 99.9% of what you find in Deontay Wilder's resume. And no, that's not hyperbole. I'm not exaggerating.
Who's supposed to be better than Usyk? Malik Scott?
Luis Ortiz, you're always fucking hearing about Luis Ortiz. He never medaled as an amateur, he never made it to the Olympics, and he was never a champion in the pros. So what the hell's supposed to make him better than an Alexander Usyk? I mean, really think about this. Anthony Joshua's taking all his heat for losing to that guy, but that's the kind of guy that Wilder was kept away from for most of his career.
And Anthony didn't swerve him.
No, he behaved like a champion and did what a champion is expected to do.
This was Anthony Joshua's 26th professional fight.
An Olympic gold medalist and former undisputed cruiserweight champion. That's who Anthony Joshua was locking horns with in his 26th pro fight. You want to see who Wilder was fighting in his 26th pro fight? Some unheralded guy that goes by the name of Kelvin Price. Was he the caliber of fighter that Usyk is? No, not an Olympic gold medalist, not an undisputed champion anywhere in any division. How the fuck guys like this are worse for years upon years. And what bakes my noodle about all of this is, when you're fighting solid fighters, real solid fighters, solid competition, losses are gonna happen.
They are.
But if you're fighting the kind of guys that Wilder was fighting for 7 fucking years.
All that is stat padding.
You could get a ham sandwich to 32-0 if you match it the way that Wilder was matched for the first 7 years of his career.
And this is what's supposed to make him the most dangerous guy out there.
The knockout percentage that he amassed by being guided away from all the capable fighters in his division for years.
The knockout percentage he amassed fighting no-hopers.
Because the vast majority of his knockouts are over journeymen, club fighters, no-hopers, and fat cruisers.
Wilder's own fucking fans couldn't tell you who he fought in his first 25 fights.
And the only reason Tyson Fury's talking up Deontay Wilder is to indirectly toot his own horn for having beaten him. But Deontay Wilder being the most dangerous guy out there, that mantle, that handle is neither proven nor earned, because Deontay Wilder hasn't faced the vast majority of what's out there. And he's been around for 13 years, a little over a decade.
Tyson Fury's been pretty careful himself.
At the level that Anthony Joshua has been competing, do you think that they'd let him get away with fighting a Sefer Seferi or Francesco Pianetta or a Tom Schwartz? Do you think they'd let him get away with that kind of matchmaking at the level that he's competing because they let Tyson Fury get away with it? No. It's mandatory after mandatory for Anthony Joshua. Kubrat Pulev, who he fought late last year. That was a mandatory challenger. Alexander Usyk, who he fought this past Saturday, this year. That was a mandatory challenger.
Those weren't handpicks,
Because Anthony don't do as much handpicking as you and Wilder.
Stop me when I tell a lie.